Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Welcome on into Silverland as we have another exciting day of silver coverage. Nice rally in silver today, which was good news for tonight's sponsor, First Majestic Silver, who you probably are already quite familiar with. Obviously, if you're expecting higher silver prices, First Majestic, one of the largest primary pure silver miners out there. There's not a lot of them out there. So obviously First Majestic, run by Keith Newmeyer, who you've seen on the show and is now paying a dividend as well, is bringing you tonight's episode. And we'll dig into First Majestic, an interesting story out about them, as well as some other news to catch you up on here on a Tuesday. Feels like a while since I've been doing one of these videos alone. We've had a lot of guests lately, and we will be continuing your Silver December coverage throughout the end of the month. Some fun stuff planned, including Ted Butler coming up later this week. But tonight we have some silver news, and we'll dig into some silver stocks as well, and also show you some record-setting demand in the Silver Trust this year, which we've covered throughout the year, and take a look. It's going to be quite a fascinating year to review and look back on. I guess we're December, what is it today? December 15th. Wow, there's so much that's happened. Somewhere in there, we released the big Silver Short book, had Silverfest, watched silver go up $10, come back down a bit, and maybe towards these last 2 weeks now that we have left in the month will be fun to really take a step back and think about everything that happened, what can be learned from that, what might be reasonable to expect going forward as 2021 comes into play in just a short amount of time. At least for today, though, you can see silver, let's call it about 60 cents, as I believe it appears on my SLV ticker. So we'll call that 64 cents on the day. So decent rally in silver. Again, no particular news. I'm sure we could look at the tape on the COMEX and when the algos were getting busy, but at least this time it went up. And as we look back on this year and think what might be realistic, some great articles I caught recently from Silver Investing News. That's Charlotte McLeod over there, as well as a couple other folks. And nice silver blog that I get their updates by email. So we'll take a look here from its lowest to highest point this year. Silver climbed an impressive 137%, although for us fans of the idea of $50 silver, still is a good number. But anyway, we'll take a look down here. Impact of COVID-19 on the silver supply has been the same for gold, only more pronounced because mined silver supply is much more concentrated in major producing countries. So this year, mines in all three countries were temporarily suspended. So as you have heard me talk about throughout the year, a lot of supply went offline due to COVID. But here is Michael D'Arienzo, who I've spoken with before, of the Silver Institute, mentions that ETPs, which they define as exchange traded product, similar to an ETF, but they call, and we'll refer to that as SLV and the other trusts, established a record this year, an increase of about 350 million ounces. Let us go to the chart here. See, here is the Silver Trust. We'll call this in the 1150-ish ballpark. And as you see up here, 1504. So there's your 350 million ounces right there. That was a record setter. You see, as I talked about much throughout the year, this chunk right there, the inflows have settled down over the past couple months. A few sizable outflows, then a couple small inflows. So keep an eye on what that looks like going forward. But Michael D'Arienzo mentioning that is a record. He thinks this is a reflection of investors' portfolio diversification, getting into hard assets like silver. I would agree, yet at the same time say I don't think the party has yet begun. Again, one of the things that we talked about quite a bit on the show and in the book, The Big Silver Short, which I might add makes a great Christmas present, but we'll come back to that. But if you're wondering why silver sat below $20 for 4 years and then just shot up, I would suggest that's not normal, random, there wasn't, well, you have all these factors that would suggest a sharp move up like that. The move didn't occur when these things did. It was months later when silver finally moved, after COVID had knocked supply offline, after you can go back and watch the show, had Andy Scheckman of Miles Franklin on week after week, talking about the incredible demand, talking about how product was hard to find. I might add, I did record Andy's call for this week, and he mentions that the premiums have been going back up. So that will be released Saturday night, but so I want you to have the best information possible as soon as possible. We'll get you that one a couple of days early. So anyway, but you had these, demand surge, supply fall. It was a couple months later when the price moved. And without digging into the minutia of that yet again tonight, I would just suggest that maybe that's a more realistic expectation of how silver will be priced, where I think in the longer term, hopefully the medium term, and maybe that will be in the short term, you'll see these things ironed out. And that's why I am such a big advocate of silver. And again, just for anyone who's wondering, I think I've mentioned this before, I have a few cryptos that I've held for a couple of years, which are not worth much. And basically everything else that I earn these days, I put into silver and silver mining stocks. I've slowed down on the options lately, which I guess is good since not much has happened. And I avoided burning through some premium, try to pick some selective spots there. But I say this again, I don't recommend by any means for people to have such a non-diversified approach. I'm only saying that just people ever wonder, are you just talking about silver because you have sponsors? I've been doing this long before any of that came along. And if anybody's ever really curious about any more of that, always try and be as transparent as possible. But again, that's what I turn to. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say when you see what the Fed's doing. I keep trying to convince Andy and Miles Franklin to just put Jerome Powell as 60 Minutes appearance as the homepage for Miles Franklin. Greatest silver salesman ever. And anyway, let's see. Although demand has recovered, most areas still on track for heavy losses. Keep in mind, this is the same Silver Institute that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, where they were doing their projected numbers for 2020, and currently they are showing a 318.5 million ounce deficit, which would be kind of big. And we'll see how that plays out. Silver Institute does think the future is bright for silver. And gets into a couple stocks here. Actually, there's my friend Stephen Cope of Silver Viper, who was nice. We got to talk to quite a bit at Silverfest. And actually, they had some news out today, and I've been wanting to check in with Steve. I think Steve is one of the more impressive mining CEOs that I've met in the past couple of years, and it was great. He was really teaching class in that room at Silverfest. So it'd be great to introduce you guys to Steve and what they're doing at Silver Viper. Anyway, you see that some targets to hit $30. I would certainly think that's possible. I'll perhaps even go as far as to say that if we're rounding out 2021 and silver is trading like $30.44, gee, I'd say that would be a little disappointing. I mean, I don't know. Again, I guess people see or expect different things, and at least my expectation is not legal financial advice, but when I close my eyes and think, how do I see this resolving, is probably you get more periods like what we saw this year, but more extreme. So that, you know, if you told me silver kind of just fluttered around here until eventually there was a problem with an exchange or a failure to deliver or some monster QE package or a big buyer, something like that. And then I kind of see it as a sharp break at some point, you know, which is not necessarily to say that that's how it plays out, but you know, you can look back to gold following the collapse of the London gold pool in the late 60s. And so, I mean, there from, let's call that 1968, gold goes from $35, 12 years to $850. So it's that 20, 30x return over 10 years. Although I think there will be some sharp breaks in there whenever this stuff resolves, at least if my analysis is correct. Maybe we'll ask Steve Cope about it. I would love to hear what he thinks. So anyway, that is an article on Silver Investing News, a great site. And as I mentioned, they talked about 350 million ounces being added. That's right there. We'll back this out a little bit so you can see really how historic that is. So, I mean, for anyone who thinks, well, is the silver price getting a little parabolic this year? I would say that it finally, at least somewhat, you can see the price there in gray. At least this matches the amount of metal that was added in there. Again, I'd say it has some catching up to do. I love this chart because here you see back in 2011, here this gray line, that's $50 silver. So as metal is being added in, you know, you had 700 million ounces here. And then even before the price rose, let's go back to last year. So silver comes from 50 bucks down to 15, while you have 700 million ounces and you go up to basically about 1 billion. So the amount of metal added goes up 50%, while you see one of the most severe bear markets in silver history. It'd be a pretty severe bear market in any asset market history, I would think. So anyway, my guess is that, you know, we see these big moves regularly, sometimes up as well, but they're not, I think they're correlated to the things that these guests that I have on the show one after another talk about, the levered markets, the algorithms, whether you call it manipulated or just irrelevant from what's actually happening in physical silver. But to me, that always left the Achilles heel that one day someone shows up demanding a piece of physical that is not there. And, you know, with that, the Silver Institute's numbers are even close of a 318 plus million ounce deficit this year. And then let alone if there is pressure, we've seen pressure on these short positions. That I think is also the other, someone tries to buy out of that. It seems like it kind of happened this year, but anyway, we'll keep tracking it. And amongst other things, we'll keep tracking the silver stocks, which you see, look at First Majestic, our sponsor tonight, up 86 cents, 8.21% on the day. A lot of green there. Again, as I mentioned, silver up, track the SLV, 64 cents. And it's interesting because my ticker here, thanks to Seeking Alpha, had a nice article by Don Durrett, who I've not met, but read several of his articles. And First Majestic Silver, more upside potential than you think. So I figured let's take a look at this one. And actually, I like the way he writes, especially there's a lot of people that I think are brilliant at their analysis of these mining stocks, yet they don't remember that not everybody is quite at that same level of comprehension as they are. So good article here if you Google that title, because it was laid out, easy to read. First Majestic, large producer in Mexico, producing about 22 million ounces in 2020, 3 producing mines in Mexico, break even around 16 per ounce. it was a little bit lower than that last time I looked, but I will assume he's got the right number. Here, as you see, the 1% dividend that was recently announced. Plan to expand production from 22 million ounces in 2020 to 30 million by 2023. And Don says that's a big jump. The market seems to be ignoring it. It is clearly not priced in. So again, to be clear, this is not legal financial advice, but just research we were sharing. So do your own due diligence. Although here is interesting because, and hopefully I have my, okay, yes. The tax issue with First Majestic, obviously you've heard a lot about, a lot of people are asking about, and fortunately, Jeff Clark, my good friend from goldsilver.com, talked about that at Silverfest, and I figured we would just go ahead and play a little snippet of that now. I'm gonna make sure we got the sound enabled. And yeah, I think Keith commented on it last time, but anyway, let's play a minute or two of this, and I think you'll find it useful.
This is coming from an old stream agreement that the company got from their Primero purchase of the San Dimas mine. The important thing to be aware of is that no laws have been broken by the company. They have not done, you know, something that warrants a fine or anything like that. Secondly, and importantly, the Mexican government's already lost on this issue. This issue already went to the Mexican court system, and the Mexican government lost. First Majestic won. The government's not accepted that, and that's why it's still an outstanding issue. So one thing that has hindered the price is that some fund managers cannot buy the stock because of this, quote, outstanding legal issue. So some of these funds will have a mandate or a prospectus or something that'll say we will not buy a stock that has an outstanding legal issue. So according to their prospectus, they may not actually be able to buy the stock. So that obviously has hindered the stock to a certain extent. Behind the scenes, I can tell you.
I'm going to pause there just for 1 second. Again, that is one of many factors which would go into the analysis, but just the kind of thing that catches my eyes where when you see a market do something that doesn't seem, how to put it in the right context. If you start that there's at free market buyers and sellers meet at some sort of equilibrium, and then if there's some outside factor like this one where there's a legal mandate, but it's not pricing it based on the merits of it, but because of something outside, can be the kind of thing that will influence me. So just thought that was an interesting one, but we'll let Jeff finish here.
The precious metals secretary in Mexico is talking about it. However, the government has not come back to the table yet. So in my opinion, I do think this is probably headed to international arbitration here in the next few months. That's my opinion only. It's just a guess, but we're probably headed to international court. Okay, let's talk worst case scenario. If the company were to lose, the entire tax liability is $214 million. Sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's only 6% of their market cap at current.
I thought that was the other one that stood out to me where, again, obviously it is a lot of money, yet, and there's some amount you value it, yet I find that's, again, the kind of thing where context often gets missed, and perhaps whether that's being valued properly, I would think you would take a weighted average of that. Okay, 214 is the full loss. Well, if they actually pay that, then you have 100% of this, but what is the probability of this? Maybe there's 50% probability the amount comes out to X, and 75, or basically that's in option land what we would do, weighted average probability. But even at 100%, you're looking at 6% of the market cap. So, you know, certainly a factor and worth pricing in, but let us continue.
Prices. And anything less than 10% is considered immaterial to a lot of hedge funds and things like that. The reason is because First Majestic Silver is a large producer. They generate a lot of cash flow. They can't absorb it. They would take a hit, obviously, to earnings and things like that, but they can't absorb it. It won't be a deal killer or a company breaker. That's the worst case scenario. In my opinion, the worst case scenario is not likely to play out. If it goes to international court, First Majestic could win. If they lose, there'll probably be some sort of agreement on a lesser amount. This does need to be resolved favorably, in my opinion, because the message it would send to other companies operating in Mexico would not be good. I do think it does need to resolve favorably, though, because this is going to be a big issue for the country. So hopefully that's not the case. A similar thing did happen to Wheaton Precious Metals. It was Silver Wheaton at the time. Once that issue resolved, the stock did rebound tremendously. Okay, so what are the catalysts real quick?
So there you go. Again, you know, as in most investing situations, it's not necessarily going to be clear cut. But I guess the way that at least I was trained from an option perspective is that essentially if you imagine you're breaking things down into a coin flip, if it's a fair coin and I'm getting 51 and this guy pays me 51 cents when I win and only pay 49 cents when I lose, well, as long as I make my bet size appropriate, then you can become the casino. Now, if you have your bankroll is $100 and you bet the whole 50 at a time, then you have a good shot of going bust. Whereas if you were betting a dollar at a time, the math goes more in your favor. And anyway, so just that's an update on that issue, and I'll leave it to you to consult with your financial strategist from there and how to best proceed. But I'm a fan, so we'll see what else we have in this one. Risk red flags. The only red flag is their focus in Mexico, which is steadily losing its reputation as a mining-friendly country. I guess, especially with Biden coming into the U.S., pretty much anywhere in the globe seems to be losing its reputation as mining-friendly. So, yeah, certainly jurisdictional risk worth considering and pricing in as you see fit. I like this. I'm going to use 2 silver prices and time frames. Also going to use break even of 20. So a couple assumptions up there, but scenario 1 with the $50 silver price, and then scenario 2 with the $100 silver price, which, gee, that I try to be responsible here, although let's say we let go of the timeline for a second. Forget everything else. I mean, it just seems to me that even if silver were fairly valued now at 25 bucks, when you understand why the Fed has passed the point of no return, where they can never undo that money, and I think in 2021, we'll see massive increases in the Fed balance sheet. My understanding of the credit cycle, as explained by the Austrian economist in situations like these, is that not only does the printed money stay, but more is required, and then eventually at an increasingly accelerating rate. How quickly that happens, if that can be seen year by year, or if it's slower than that, we'll see. But anyway, I mean, it seems like at some point they're just going to print so much money that you will see big silver prices, perhaps like $100, and we'll just leave that one at that. But where is the, yes. Okay. I'll again leave you if you want to read that, but I thought this sentence would make people happy. First Majestic has much more potential upside than most investors realize. It is quite conceivable that they could be a 10-bagger at $100 silver in 3 years when they reach 30 million ounces of production. So certainly those are some big numbers. Whether it'll be in 3 years, I don't know, but certainly that's within the realm of possibility to me. It's not to say that is a guarantee to happen, but can leave it there. And oh, there was one other note that I wanted to mention here. Oh yeah, conversely, if silver prices fall, so he's saying the reason to own First Majestic for its upside potential is dependent on rising silver prices. Conversely, if silver prices fall, then their share price will also fall, which makes sense. And I'm not going to say I disagree with, although I would just point out, here's the yearly chart. First Majestic, we see January 2nd at 12:22, and today it's 11:33. And that was back when over here, silver is 18 bucks. And where are we at today? So silver is $6.50 higher, and First Majestic is lower on the year. Again, there were a lot of extenuating circumstances throughout the year. I don't know. It just seems a little bit cheap to me relative to the current bullion price, but that is just a gut feel rather than a precise calculation. So I don't know. I think you'll probably see moves quite big, similar to this and what you saw with silver earlier this year. And we'll find out how it goes. Perhaps the best thing is that, I don't know, I like to continue to structure things so that it really doesn't matter. I mean, it's fun to follow this stuff and cover it on day to day, although I'm just continuing to find the stocks that I like, leave them there, hope I touch them as little as possible. Couple last ones here, a few more silver investing news stories. Best silver stocks of 2020 on the TSX. Now, keep in mind, this is not Melissa Pistilli's, at least if I'm understanding correctly, not what she is doing in her analysis, what's going to go up the most, but rather I think these are just simply ranked by the percentage return. So some that I'm a bit familiar with, some not so much. Sierra Metals, Fortuna Silver, who will be joining us on the show tomorrow. Avino Silver, who I've met some of the folks from before, and I'm planning to reach out to. Great Panther. Endeavor Silver coming up in the next month or so. It's good projects there. And then they also had a list of junior miners. Interesting here, Abra Plata up 525%. Silver Tiger 400%, Golden Tag 344, Canuck Resources. So that part you would expect. See here the gains in the 50 to 70% versus in the juniors. So that is the market compensation. Again, a lot of these junior miners, they can have a great business plan and do things well and not find something. That's why the ones that do find a good deposit, you know, that's where you can get some of those 10 or 20 or 30 baggers. Here it looks like this one 5 bagger, and that's, you know, the silver move we saw this year. So anyway, some names if you want to look at for further due diligence. Lastly, in case you needed another reason to think that, you know, precious metals were going to do well, here now, apparently the U.S. Treasury has been hacked. I'm not sure if this is like a code that it was hacked by the Federal Reserve, and they planted a spy named Janet Yellen in there to basically, I don't know, dissolve any last remaining fictional boundaries of independence between the Fed and the Washington establishment. I'm being a little bit of a smart ass there, but, you know, foreign government which stole information from the U.S. Treasury Department. Has there ever been an agency, actually started writing this platform up a couple of years ago, what I would do as president. And basically it just consists of dissolving any government agency I've ever found. I mean, U.S. Treasury got us 27 trillion in debt. Now it's being run by the Fed and it's being hacked by a foreign government. So I guess their McAfee software didn't do much. But anyway, if you're wondering, at least my best response to all this is silver. Why is that? Well, earlier this year, or actually the last couple of years, I wanted to lay out as simply as possible all the different things that are happening, what's going on with the banks, of which we've now seen JP Morgan caught, what Bart Chilton confirmed that was rather stunning to me and a lot of other people in the industry. And and really put it into one book, one document, where if you knew nothing about silver and were just hearing and wanted to have this all in the right context, this was the best that I could figure out how to do. Fortunately, I think people are liking it quite a bit so far. The Big Silver Short, available on Amazon, or there's a tab for the book on arcadiaeconomics.com. Paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. Makes a great Christmas present. So if you have maybe your teacher and you want to get a bunch of copies for your students so they can grow up, especially if anyone is teaching, sixth grade or younger, and then they get a bunch of copies. We have a team of third graders who could out-trade anyone that I ever worked with on Wall Street. I'll bring them on the show. We can discuss it. Again, I know that's not a high bar. It's like saying, want to find some kids who are smarter than a congressman. I'll stop now. But anyway, yes, I think that if you've ever felt overwhelmed in that same way that was so well portrayed in the movie The Big Short, or feel as if this stuff was made to seem more confusing than it has to be, well, that's what The Big Silver Short did, or was attempted to do, and I think did, to really make that clear and easy in a way that people can understand, also have a fun time reading. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up for tonight. But once again, this video was sponsored by First Majestic Silver, and fortunately Keith Newmeyer, who runs First Majestic, was on the show a couple weeks ago, giving an update of what's going on there, and that is coming your way now.